Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware, and today we're going to just sort of go over this platform I have in front of me here. We have an RX 480 4GB card, and then we have a Skylake CPU being paired with it. So let's talk about this platform and why it might make some sense for those of you out there that are looking to build a gaming PC while not also spending an arm and a leg. So the first talking point of this platform is obviously the GPU itself. There is nothing new with this particular RX 480 4GB card. You saw it in my last video and you saw the gaming performance that it had to offer when paired with a Ryzen 5700G. So there should be no surprises there whatsoever, and that is the case with this Skylake platform. The RX 480 4GB card does exactly what it's supposed to do. And by the way, if you're interested in seeing how it does with the Ryzen CPU, I'll try to remember to link that video in a card above. But really the star of today's show is this Skylake platform. So for those of you that may not be aware, Skylake was Intel's 6000 series of desktop processors. This is a 6600K. This comes from the i5 days where i5 meant 4 cores, no hyper-threading, so just 4 physical cores, and that was all you got. Now, this was obviously the pre-Ryzen revolution, and I know I sort of jokingly say Ryzen revolution, but AMD really did push the core and thread counts up to the point where Intel needed to throw more cores and threads at their own CPUs to keep up, because even though early Ryzen CPUs didn't match Intel in the IPC field, they did pack a ton more cores for the same price. So if you had multi-threaded tasks that you regularly did, and a lot of video editors at the time or streamers at the time could take advantage of those threads and cores, Intel needed to keep up. So Skylake and the i5 generation, where it was 4 cores, 4 threads, that pretty quickly went by the wayside after Kaby Lake. Now, as you already know, the RX 480 4GB card makes a great gaming GPU. At least here in 2021, it still holds its own at 1080p resolution. But as a card that is, budget by today's standards, which means it's about $225, $250, but it is not a high-end GPU, and it's not a GPU that's going to get you up and going at 1440p with AAA titles, and certainly not 4K. The CPU that we're going to want to pair with a 480 is going to be somewhat limited in the grand scheme of things. That is, we are not expecting to get huge performance out of a 480. Even in esports titles like Overwatch, you're not going to see gigantic frame rates, or at least those numbers aren't going to be huge. So we don't really need to worry about pairing it with the best CPUs out there. And if you're trying to build a new gaming PC, or at least new to you, around a 480, you want to be sensible about where else you're spending your money. And that's why I'm looking at this Skylake system today, other than it's just laying around here so I can look at it. But I was actually looking at eBay a little bit earlier, and you can often find motherboards paired with CPUs that are the 6600K and a Z170 motherboard for $150-ish, and that's just on eBay. And in your local market, you may well do better if you happen to have a larger market to work with there. So if you can find a motherboard and CPU for under $150, plus knowing that DDR4 memory right now is quite inexpensive, you can get the entire platform, the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM together for under $200. And I have a pretty nice CPU cooler on this thing right now, but you can also find really, really solid coolers that are going to do a great job on a 4-core CPU like this 6600K for $20 to $30 all day long on places like Amazon. So for a platform, you're looking at a very low cost of entry here, and that's really important right now because GPUs are ridiculously expensive. So if you could get the platform together for about $200, add in a $250 GPU, then you're going to add in probably, a $50 case, $50 of storage, and maybe a $25 to $35 power supply, depending on what the prices look like when you go to purchase one. You could be looking at something like a $550 or a $600 gaming PC completely out the door and ready to start playing games. And the great thing about the PC platform is you're going to be able to play all of the most recent games, like literally all of them, including ones that are ridiculously demanding like Cyberpunk 2077. Now, don't misunderstand me. You're not going to be playing these games at 4K or even in most cases 1440p if you're looking at demanding modern games. However, in a time where a console is pretty much unobtainium right now, at least at normal pricing, unless you just get lucky and get into a Newegg shuffle, then getting a gaming PC together that's going to be competent and able to play whatever it is that you want to play for $600 is actually a pretty solid deal right now, especially because as it sits, this does have an upgrade path. Because a 6600K is just the i5 lineup, you could always move to an i7 down the road, and keep in mind, these Skylake chips are not very expensive. Now, all that's not to say that this is a no compromise rig, because the fact is this is full of compromises. For instance, first and foremost, streaming is very popular right now. This is probably not a system you're going to be able to play your game and stream together on. It's just not a hardware configuration that's going to really support that. You'll also notice in some of the gameplay, the bottleneck in the system flip-flops between the GPU and the CPU. So depending on what games you want to play, that CPU may become a serious issue. And when your CPU is the bottleneck, instead of just seeing lower frame rates, you often start to see some frame time issues as well. So if you enjoy playing games that are extremely demanding on the CPU, then I don't know that this is the exact configuration you're going to want either. But if you're just looking to get up and running and playing games in general, then a 6600K paired with cheap memory and at least relative to 2021, a cheap GPU like an RX 480 4GB card is actually not a bad way to go. And considering, once again, that it's really hard to find new consoles right now, it's really hard to find gaming PCs that are even reasonably priced, something like this for about $600, once you get it in a case with its own power supply, storage, everything else included that's not on the platform right now, yeah, this is not a bad way to go. But now that I am done rambling, of course, I do want to hear from those of you out there that are still rocking quad-core i5s. That would be like, especially the 6600Ks, the 7600Ks back in the Skylake and Kaby Lake generations. I do want to hear from you and let me know exactly how those CPUs are performing for you in modern AAA titles. Because of course, I did very limited game testing with this configuration. So of course, I just want to hear more about your experiences in those comments down below. Otherwise, if you like the video, give it a like, share, subscribe, and comment. All those things are very helpful for the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.